Quraysh, hey, you guys want your prisoner of war back? Give us X amount of money back. Or maybe they will see the way that how we act and they'll become Muslim, right? Imagine they're looking at some of their family members, their uncles, or cousins, etc. Okay. Umar radiallahu anhu comes and says, Ya Rasulullah, we should kill them. Right? It's a war. They were trying to kill us. They're in a battle just now. These people have been terrorizing us for so long. I think we should kill them there. And if I would ask all of you, here that this is the first major battle in Islam, the Battle of Badr. And so we have all these prisoners of war here. What are some things you think that the Muslims should do at that time? If you were up to that, you were given that opportunity. I know it's kind of like a little harsh, you don't want to kill anybody ever in your life, but anyhow, you know what I mean? Like, what do you think would be the best option for that? Okay. And this is a very, very good point of how we understand balancing between strength, might, and balancing between mercy. Okay? Those who have children know this very well. I could be really nice to them and say, no, it's okay what you did wrong. You marked all over the walls, but next time don't do that. Or you could just say, you know what, I'm taking all the markers away and you're going to sit in that corner for 10 minutes. Okay. And you're not going to be able to move around anymore. And because look what you all did, right? So there's two different ways of disciplining. And obviously your child is not an enemy like the Quraysh that was trying to kill you. That's a whole different thing there. So I would ask you, what are some things you think that the Muslims should do at this? A lot of you have studied the Seerah, you maybe already know what the answer is. But what is something on the pros and cons, and why would we change? Why would the Prophet choose this or choose that, right, between the two? Anyone want to have a guess or have a crack at it? I'm here.
Well, should I say what he did?
Well, obviously, we did. I ended up, right.
Well, okay, the benefit to it was definitely that those things back to this earlier with behave, and then also there's a benefit to Muslims because Quraysh were able to provide something to them. That some of them weren't able to do.
Right. There you go. Yeah, they said, you guys teach 10 people how to read, and then we'll let you go. Right. The benefit of knowledge, right? Anyone else want to have a crack at it?
Well, the other way is, so if you look at it from the hard point, right? You would kill them. I mean, sure. Don't ever mess with us. Okay, that's what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also a bit of a deterrent.
Right.
Kind of a bit of a deterrent because we are not pacifists.
Yeah, there you go. Right.
I mean,
yeah.
There's very clear teachings in the Quran. I mean, help pacifists.
Yeah. Exactly. And you all know, I think you have lived life long enough, that if you forgive people and say, it's okay, don't worry, it's all right, then it gets to the point of, hold on, are people taking advantage of me? Or am I being nice? What am I doing here, right? And everyone knows that, okay, you could just, do anything to that guy's car, or, do anything at work. He's never going to complain, you know what I mean? And that he's always going to be that nice guy. And then what happened, and you ask yourself, am I getting taken advantage of, or am I just I'm having good character? And I'm trying to teach people how to have mercy. And that's a really big balance here. I think a lot of us are presented, whether we're dealing with people at work or your neighbors or spouse or your children, how do you plan that, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals in Surah Anfal, chapter number 8 here, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, it's not befitting for a prophet that he should have prisoners of war until he has thoroughly subdued the land, like cause a great victory in the land. And you look at the temporal goods of this world, but Allah desires for you the hereafter, and Allah exalted in might and wise and wisdom. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala corrects the Prophet ﷺ. And just a little point here, we don't ever say that it's a matter of aqidah and belief, though. We never say that the Prophet ﷺ ever made a sin. Okay, prophets don't make sin; they make mistakes. And you might hold on, what is that? Sounds like the difference here in terms of the definition of a word here and there. But what we say, a mistake is that there's two options and you choose the lesser of the two options. Okay, that's what we call a mistake. They both are correct, but this is not the best of the options. You understand? And a sin is totally against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants, and something that's, a little bit different. So here the Prophet just chose this one, obviously with all the benefits of it, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala corrected him. That you should have killed the prisoners, right? Because it would have made a much big impact. It's the first war ever for the Muslims. I know Allah, alhamdulillah, we have a lot of mercy. The Prophet was a very merciful Rahim, right? He has extremely amount of mercy that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes in the Quran. And so here is that you never really see on the opposite end. That if you're going to be a leader and you have no discipline and no type of footing on making things profound, people will take advantage of it. And those who are parents know this very well. You're always nice to your children all the time, and you really don't discipline them, then you're just like, dad's going to give us our toys back in 5 more minutes. Dad's going to do this. He's going to give us ice cream. Doesn't matter. We can mess around all day long. And so it's the same thing here, that sometimes you have to put your foot down. Sometimes you have to make very clear that these are our borders and this is who we are. And we don't appreciate this and that. You know what I mean? We'll see this a lot with the Prophet ﷺ, and a lot of you have studied the Seerah before, where the Prophet ﷺ lets go a lot of his enemies. He says, you guys can go free. It's okay. We know you did wrong, but you have to leave Medina and live here and live there, do something, things like that. And we'll see how that backfires a little bit, and sometimes that works out really well. Okay, so that is a big thing that just to think about. Another thing, just to think about how the Prophet ﷺ, as a husband, as a family man, one of the prisoners of the war is his son-in-law. Okay, his name is Abdul As, who is the husband of Zainab radiallahu anha. Zainab is one of the daughters of the Prophet ﷺ. So imagine you're there and you have your son-in-law that's sitting right there, right? Some people have their own father there, think about that. And this is my daughter's husband that cares for her, takes care of her, but he's a mushrik, he's not a Muslim, and we're about to kill him, right? That's what's going to happen. Now the prisoners of the war, they were set free, they were on ransom, they weren't killed, right? And what happens, Zainab radiallahu anha, she comes to, that's my husband, I want to ransom him. Of course, she didn't have much money, so she had a necklace. And she said, here, I'll give you this necklace if you let him go free. Imagine she's negotiating with who? Her father. How awkward is that? You know what I mean? We don't really think about this, how the Prophet has to deal with these emotional type of things, right? And so he takes the necklace, the Muslims take the necklace and say, go ahead, Abdul As, go ahead to your wife, you're free now. And the people said, well, that's the daughter of the Prophet ﷺ. How can we take her necklace, And so they give it back to her and say, just take it, and, he's free to go. Okay. So those are one things that, that happened during that time. And there's a lot of these little stories that went there also, that went over. After the Battle of Badr, remember the Quraysh are sitting in Mecca now. They are totally upset that a lot of their fathers, a lot of their children, a lot of their brothers were killed in this battle. They got humiliated. Everyone's making fun of them, that the small little Muslim country, right, the Muslim empire, was able to defeat them. So there's 2 individuals there that are sitting there saying, what can we do? One is Umair ibn Wahab and Safwan ibn Umayyah. And they're saying, we have to do something. So they decide, we're going to go to Medina, walk over there from Mecca, right? It's going to take a long time to walk over there. And we're going to assassinate the Prophet ﷺ. So many people have tried this already so many times, right? So Safwan ibn Umayyah and Umair goes there. They go to Medina. They're carrying their swords. They go up to the door of the Prophet ﷺ. And Omar says, what are you doing here? We're going to Omar. You saw Omar's opinion before. So Omar's like, I'm going to kill you. We see your sword. We know who you are. They're like, no, we just want to see how our prisoners are doing, right? Because one of his sons were the prisoners. And so I just want to check on my son if he's okay. I'm not here to fight. So the Prophet tells Omar, leave him alone. Just let him in. Let him come in. Let him come into the house. So Omar comes into the house, tells the Prophet, I'm not here for war. So the Prophet tells him, why are you bringing a sword for? Right? And what happened, Omar dipped that sword in poison. So if he would just touch the Prophet or do some type of, incision, whatever, to evasive act, that poison would get into his body. And so the Prophet asked him, then why are you bringing a sword? Right? So it's a very clear question, right? So Omar said, what? This sword has not done anything good for me. It has only caused me ruin. They try to make some excuse. And then the Prophet says, what? I know what you're here for. I know that you talked to Safwan back in Mecca, and he made this plan to come and assassinate me. Imagine Omar's like, who heard that? Who eavesdropped there, right? And then he says, I now bear witness that you are the Prophet of Allah, and I bear witness that I take the Shahada and I become a Muslim. And so he became a Muslim right there on the spot. And we'll see that there's a lot of instances like this. That there's another one with the Prophet making tawaf, and there's a guy behind him that's trying to sneak behind the Prophet and kill him again. And the Prophet turns around and says, oh, blah, 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 what are you doing? How are you doing? He's like, I'm only praising Allah. I'm only doing this. He's all that. You're not, trying to plot and try to kill me? And the man's like, he takes Shahada also. So this is obviously that Jibreel alayhi salam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives him this inspiration that he knows what's going on. And alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects their prophet. So they have the incidents that happen like this. Also during this time, there was a delegation, okay? Right now we're talking about the second year in Medina. There was a delegation that came from Yemen, a group of like around 70 or 60 something Christians that they heard that there was a prophet that came. Okay. Of course, the Christians know about prophets, and of course the Jews know about prophets. So they want to visit him, the Prophet, find out, question him, and see who he was. So this delegation from Najran is a place in Yemen. They come there with 14 of their, their scholars, and they sit in front of the Prophet. It's like a dawah session, right? Open masjid day, right? And so they're there, and they go back and forth, asking the Prophet some X amount of questions, going back and so forth. Who's the best person to talk about Islam? The Prophet, right? And so, guess if I tell you, I guess how many of those people from that group of 60, 70 people became Muslim? What would you say, right? Someone that comes to the Prophet and meets them and talks to them, right? And they're Christians, they come from some type of, they have scripture, they have background about prophets. What would you say? How many people you think that would have probably took Shahada, became Muslim? 80%? 90? Almost all, anyone? Yes. 90%, all right, high, right? None of them became Muslim. Okay. None of them. Okay. And this is not a aib, or we say something negative to say about the Prophet. The point I'm bringing this up is that sometimes me and you would talk to our coworkers, and like, that's so obvious. I talked to them for like, a whole lunch hour. I give this person a Quran, I told them watch this video and all this. And it doesn't really matter sometimes. If their heart is not open, their heart is not open. Allah controls that. Our job is to talk to them every lunch hour, right? Or any break that we have, or as long as HR department allows it. Usually they do, but anyhow, and whatever, you do it discreetly, whatever you have to do, and you put your effort in. And from all these people, they took it and none of them became Muslim. Okay, and so that's to show Allah wants control of it, even though it's the Prophet of Allah, people are not going to accept it. Nuh alayhi salam, we all know Nuh alayhi salam, prophet for how many years? 950 years. That's a lot of life. Okay, just talking to people over and over and over again, right? And he only had a handful of people that believed him. Only his own son didn't go on his boat, right? And so what's also this interesting is that after they're leaving, they say, we want to pray. And one thing I want you guys to understand, that even Orthodox, going back, rewind a long time ago, Orthodox Christians will face towards Jerusalem when they pray. There's still some little small groups now today that will do that. Christianity, with all due respect, is kind of like all over the place, right? But if you go Orthodox, they knew about Jerusalem. That's why the Muslims were facing towards Jerusalem for the first Qibla, right? And so they wanted to pray in the Masjid Nabawi. Okay, so most of us today, if we asked people in the crowd of the Masjid or Jummah, we have a group of Christians, they want to pray here in the Musalla. What do you guys think? I was like, never, they're dirty, we don't want to know, mention Jesus is God's name in here, like let them go in the grass area or whatever, right? The Prophet, the Sahaba did the same thing. They're like, no, like let's try to give them out. The Prophet said, no, let them go, let them pray. It's not a problem. Okay. And so they were able to pray. They faced east or something like this, some type of direction, and they were able to perform their prayer there. So the Prophet allowed it at all. Sometimes today we say, like, people say, are non-Muslims allowed to go to Mecca or Medina? All of us, we know that, usually they're not. There's a lot of people doing it now today. Like a lot of the YouTube videos, people putting up, they're not Muslim, they're visiting Mecca and Medina now for tourism. They're not trying to like sabotage the place. It's really interesting. You see a lot of non-Muslims there. They make this vlog where they're like, "Hey, look, I'm in Masjid Nabawi." It's so weird, but it's not that non-Muslim cannot enter these areas. And this is a clear evidence that Christians, are walking into the Masjid Nabawi and talking to the Prophet. It's not like it's anti-Muslim carpet or something like that. They could come in and out. The reason why the Saudi government doesn't allow it is obviously for for safety and security. We have our enemies, and we don't want anyone just coming in there. And also, it's a place of worship. You don't want to come like tourists coming and look at the the architecture while people are praying. That's not. We don't want the masjid to become a tourism attraction. Even though our own Muslims are doing that, and everyone with their selfie while they're making tawaf and so forth. But anyhow, so that's the reason why the government does that, and they might have other reasons. It's not that non-Muslims cannot go there. It's more of a safety and all these other things that I kind of mentioned. Okay, so the Prophet did allow that and so forth, and didn't want to didn't prevent them to do that and so forth. Obviously, this is showing our relationship with them, and it's not compromising our goals or our beliefs. By them praying inside the masjid doesn't mean that the masjid now has changed its name. It's a church now or anything like that. Right? After this battle of Badr, okay, remember we talked about the three main Jewish tribes in Medina. right? The Banu Qaynuqa, the Banu Nadir, and one called Banu Qurayza. And so after the Battle of Badr, the Jews are a little bit upset because they're seeing the Muslims are getting strength now, okay? And they really want to see the downfall of the Muslims, but they don't believe in their prophet, multiple things, if you will. And so the Jews, just like almost like today, the Jews in Medina, they ran the business sector of the city. They had their own bazaars, they're on marketplaces and so forth. And a lot of the commerce was through them. And so they had their own markets. And they were also harming the Muslims at the time. They were meeting the Prophet ﷺ, and they're telling him that, you know what, we saw what happened at the Battle of Badr. You defeated the Quraysh. But they thought they're not even known for warfare. If you fought us, you will see a true battle, right? I mean, that's not a nice thing to say if you're a neighbor next to somebody, right? You'd be kind of concerned that your neighbor might do something to you, okay? And so they were causing a lot of things. They were also plotting to kill the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet went over there and talked to them. They also tried to divide and conquer, right? Because the Muslims that were in Medina, part of them were from Mecca and part of them from Medina, right? The Ansar and Muhajirun. And they will tell them, the Ansar, the Muslims that are from Medina, remember, before they were just non-Muslim maybe 2 or 3 years ago, they'll say, remember, you guys used to kill each other. Remember, this one killed this one's father. And trying to split divisions between them. And the Prophet had to warn them, like, hey, stop doing this. And he went to them and he warned them again. And there was an incident where there was a Muslim woman that went to one of their business, the marketplace, and there was a man that pinned the woman's dress up to her shoulders, kind of revealing her legs and so forth. And there was a Muslim man and started laughing. And there was a Muslim man that saw that. And the Muslim man went and he fought that guy and he ended up killing him. And then, of course, someone came and killed him. Okay. So obviously that's a breach of treason that you're doing this to someone else, etc. That's a very big thing that you could do to somebody in their honor and their dignity. And so the Prophet ﷺ, because of this and multiple other things of what the Banu Qaynuqa was doing, the Prophet ﷺ got an army and went to their forts and surrounded it. Remember the Jews, they have the city of Medina, and the Jews had their forts, these areas where they had like a wall around them. Okay, that's how they used to live. And if you're Jewish and you're part of that tribe, you live in this area, has like a big wall around it, and you cannot enter it unless you have, they know you, etc. And so the Muslims came and the Prophet brought an army and said, that's it, we have enough of this. And they surrounded their fort for 15 days. I said, we're here. Remember you saw me, you want to fight? Let's fight. You guys are from this and you guys are that. And you guys broke the treaty, right? Because you're not supposed to harm anyone, you're not supposed to do this, etc. And the Jews, guess what? They never came out of the forts at all. And they finally gave up and they had negotiations with the Prophet ﷺ. And there was the head of the hypocrites at that time, Abdullah ibn Ubayd. It's a name that you definitely need to know. He came over and he says he's Muslim, right? But he comes over to the Jews and said, yeah, or close to the Prophet ﷺ, like, leave them alone, don't kill them, right? I know them, etc. Just take all the property and then evict them out of Medina. And that's what the Prophet ﷺ did. Okay. Remember the prisoners of war from the Battle of Badr, what happened to them? Ransom them. But what the Prophet, Allah said you should have killed them. Here, the Prophet ﷺ that, this is treason. We do treason here in America or in most countries. You're going to get, capital punishment for that. That's a big no-no. And here is that the Prophet said, okay, I'll take all your property, we'll confiscate it, but you have to leave the Medina and you have to leave out the city. And that's what they did. They got all their people and then they went to like Syria and they started living over there. And I don't know, they dispersed from there. So the Prophet dealt with them. There was no really war. They surrounded them, right? And they broke the treaty and now they're gone. Okay, that's how they handle them. I want you to go over these stories about Jews because those who know these stories, they kind of say, oh, you Muslims, you guys against Jewish people, you don't like Israel and blah, blah, blah. And that's true. Probably don't like Israel more from taking over people's land, not because you're Jewish. I mean, if you could be from Mars, but if you take someone else's land over, no one's going to like you. Okay. But they'll say like, oh, look what your prophet did to the Jews in Medina. Or like, hey, what exactly did your prophet do? Right. And if you see here, this is, Banu Qaynuqa, they did this against a Muslim woman. They also did, try to assassinate the Prophet ﷺ. And here the Muslim, they didn't complain. They didn't say like, we didn't do anything. What are you talking about? They went in their forts and they hid. They knew what they did were wrong, right? They knew that they were caught red-handed, and they left. It wasn't that the Prophet was sitting there and saying like, I don't like Jews. Let's try to get them out. Let's try to just attack them for no reason, right? It was very clear what they did and why they were kicked out of Medina. We're going to see the other two main tribes of the Jewish tribes are also going to be kicked out fairly soon because of similar things, if you will. So that's the story of Banu Qaynuqa and what happened to them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does talk about them in Surah Anfal, where he says, if you have feared that a people's betrayal, then throw their treaty back to them. I mean, show their treaty back to them. Like, you signed this, and look what you did, right? Putting them on equal terms. Indeed, Allah does not like the traitors, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the Prophet that go ahead, throw that back to them, evict them from what they have done, if you will. Okay. And they were now gone from the from Medina itself. This is a verse in Surah Ali Imran that talks about Banu Qanqa, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, say, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to the disbelievers, if you will be defeated and gathered together in hell, and the worst indeed is a place of rest. There has already been a sign for you, O Jews, in the two armies that met in the Battle of Badr, right? One was fighting for the cause of Allah, the others were disbelievers. They disbelieved and saw that the believers saw the disbelievers as twice their size. The Battle of Badr 3 times, actually. Allah is just saying that they were a large group. Allah supports his victory to whom he please. Barely in this a lesson for those who understand. So it's like kind of warning to them, like, hey, look what happened to them. Allah will defeat you, if you will. Okay. So they were defeated there. This was almost like a month after the Battle of Badr. So imagine the Prophet has no rest. We talked about one of the incidents that happened after the Battle of Badr. If you guys remember, his daughter passed away. Ruqayya, anha, right? And then within less than a month, you have this another siege. You have to go out with another army against the own Jews that are living there, and you have to. Alhamdulillah, there's no battle, but you see things are going like this. The Prophet doesn't have any rest where you could not worry that somebody's not going to attack them or do anything with them, if you will. Okay. Also, in the second year, you have Abu Sufyan, the leader of the Quraysh. He wants to get back at the Muslims. So he does an invasion where he comes into the outskirts of the city of Medina, and he tries to attack the city. And he ends up killing 2 Muslims, stealing some of their goods, and then he runs off because he doesn't want to deal with the army. Okay. And this leads to another thing where the Muslims are leading up to the next battle that's going to happen, the Battle of Uhud. Okay. And so they're doing this. They started burning some of their palm trees. That's their agriculture. That's their commerce there, and trying to harm them wherever they want. So, like I said, the Prophet has no time off. People are trying to attack them left and right. The Prophet gets back at them because the Quraysh knows that here's Mecca and here's Medina. We talked about this. If they're going to trade in Syria, you have to go right past Medina. Okay, and we saw that the Prophet was trying to attack or take over the caravan of Abu Sufyan when he was going to Syria. So the Quraysh said, you know what? If we can't go to Syria because the Muslims are there and they're going to try to steal our stuff and attack us, let's go east, if you will, to the other marketplace, and that's in Iraq, right? Baghdad and so forth. Let's go that way. And so the Quraysh got a big caravan, and it said that it had multiple $100,000 of 100,000 dirham, silver coins, a lot of money going to Iraq for commerce. The Muslims heard about this. And so the Prophet ﷺ sent 100 horsemen in the leadership of Zayd ibn Haritha, to go and capture that caravan. And they go there and they find that caravan and they capture it, and they were able to stop it and take over it, and stop them from their trade. Now, if I ask all of you, is it okay to I'm kind of mentioned this also, is it okay to steal people's caravans and stop people on the road as Muslims? We have some, you could sign up, you could stop, on the 15 freeway, going to Barstow area. And it's you have to go. That's the only freeway that's going to go north there, right? Or on the 5 or on the 10 going to Phoenix or something. And it's, if someone, one of our enemies are there, whatever, you could just go and just steal a car or something like that. Is this something that, why would the Prophet do that for? And is that allowed? And is that okay? What would we say about it? Of course, the Prophet did it to kind of already have an answer to that. But why would the Prophet do something? What would we say to that? How do we explain it?
I suppose to prevent them from getting free.
Right. All right. So if their commerce is running, then they're going to financially get stronger and stronger, buy more weapons, etc., support themselves. Right. So that's one thing, right? What else do we say about that?
Conflict, so it's not really an aggression per se. I mean, they didn't start anything. They didn't have a treaty that prevented him from doing that at that time. So I would say, Correct.
Well, they
Probably always.
right. Exactly, right.
No, I mean, I think what we say, we don't start wars, right? But that was an ongoing,
right.
You could say an ongoing war.
Yeah.
Profit took advantage of a circumstance.
Yeah. Good. Exactly. And these are the things we have to understand. Like today we have like international waters and international areas. If you're there, it's kind of like hands off. I'm not in your territory. I'm passing a boat right through that area, so here it's like there's no international desert. Like if you can pass here, like it's okay. There's no visa. Everyone's okay to pass here. It's just like that's an area. If you're trying to go and you're going to strengthen your economy, we're going to try to stop it from that stuff. What you did, you attacked us, you killed us, you tortured us, etc. And so this is like an economic warfare, right? I mean, that's allowed to do that. I mean, today we do embargoes, we'll do sanctions, right? I mean, I guess the United States only does it to other people. I don't think anyone else does anything to anyone else, but that's what we do, right? We'll do that to different countries, or hopefully harm their economy, etc., and make them give in. Okay, and that's like today. We'll do that, right? We don't stop their boats from going in the ocean and selling their oil or whatever the case may be, but we're going to tax it so much, or we're not going to let people buy it, or you have to buy it in the U.S. dollar, right? Kind of what they did with the Russian oil, and a little bit of background with that. So anyhow, so the same thing here. Obviously, they don't have that type of system here. But if you're going to go there and take money and we're having a warfare, then we're going to try to stop you, which is much better than attacking the city and killing people. That you're going to put so much pressure on them where they can't go to Syria and they can't go to Iraq. I guess they still go down to Yemen if they want to. And you know what? That's going to make them kind of give in and say, hey, guys, this is have a treaty because we need our people need to eat and we need to have our finances, etc. They're probably going to give in. So you think about it, it's much, much better than this is attack Mecca and have an all-out war, right? That's not what the Prophet always wants to do, right? That's not something that he wants to do at all. But you can see that the people in Mecca have now a big issue now. We can't trade north and we can't trade east. So guess what they're going to do? It's going to start off with their saying, no, we're going to get an army, and we're going to go up and we're going to try to fight the Muslims once again. And that's going to lead to the Battle of Uhud, okay? So they do exactly that. You say, no, we can't take anymore. We're going to go and we're just have to defeat these individuals. And so Abu Sufyan gets an army of around 3,000 people to go to Medina. He has around 1,000 camels, 50, all this different armor and so forth. Gets around people, and they want to go. He spends a lot of money on this, right? On this army. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals an ayah in Surah Anfal, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, verily those who disbelieve spend their wealth to hinder people from the path of Allah. Okay. And so they will continue to spend it, but in the end, it will become an anguish for them, and then they will be overthrown. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, listen to the words are very strong here, right? That people will spend money to harm the Muslims and to stop whatever they're doing, but in the end, it will become an anguish to them, and then they will be overthrown from that. Okay. Basically, they're going to kill themselves from all the money they've spent. Anyone want to guess how much money that our great country has spent on the war on terror and Iraq and Afghanistan and so forth? They said I was looking at about $6 trillion. That, I mean, a lot of it goes back to their own U.S. companies for army and stuff like that. Are you guys here for the Muslim program? It's down the hall. If you keep walking straight, it's the last room straight on the right hand side. Okay. Right, 6 trillion. I was just looking at that. I mean, I don't know how they always factor these numbers in, but I wouldn't doubt it, if you will, right? And obviously, we all know the debt in our country. I never understood it, how that works, but we have a lot of debt, right? How that factors and so forth like this. So Allah subhanahu says like that, they'll spend, but you'll see that what happens, that will come back to them. And that happens exactly to the Quraysh itself and so forth. And we see a lot of time that happens here, and even in our present day era, if you will. Fortunately, we live in a country that is spending that money too at the same time, so it's kind of awkward. But anyhow, may Allah subhanahu guide our leaders to Islam, and inshallah ta'ala give them guidance. Ameen ya Rabbil Alamin. So the Meccan army, right? So they get 3,000 people, 700 soldiers with armor on. You might say, well, what's so big about armor? Back in those days, that's like very rare. You have chain mail and different things like this, right? 200 horses are going. They have all this big army that they get. Abu Sufyan's the main leader. He has his main general, that is charge of the cavalry. His name is Khalid ibn Walid. A lot of us know this name. If you don't, you should definitely learn this name. So Khalid ibn Walid is the leader of the cavalry. And then he has Ikramah ibn Abi Jahl. As you know, Abu Jahl, you guys heard Abu Jahl before, right? The one who would mock the Prophet ﷺ, cause so much harm to him. He used to walk behind him, making noise, and so the Prophet, no one could hear the Prophet ﷺ like a little kid would do. All these things like Abu Jahl would do. He got killed in the Battle of Badr. This is his son Ikramah. Okay, so he's leading the other flank of the army. Abu Sufyan's the main leader, and then Khalid ibn Walid is head of the cavalry. So I want to make you know that these two people, Ikramah, who's the son of Abu Jahl, and Khalid ibn Walid, who is amazing warrior and horseman, these two individuals will later on become Muslim. Okay, and they'll be one of the best Muslims in terms of the helping out the army and so forth like that. I always bring this up because a lot of times you might look at everyone will laugh probably, right? If it's like the children of Trump, for example, right? They'll become Muslim one of these days, or the children of this leader or that leader, like they might become Muslim, or even the leader itself. Okay, and people's like, no way, those are the worst people. We'll curse them all day long. Look what they have done, etc., etc., etc. Right? But here, Allah subhanahu guys who will, and that says, the Prophet said the best who are in Jahiliyyah is going to be the best in Islam. So whatever they have over there, what they're good at, then inshallah they'll bring that goodness over to Islam. And whether that's influence, whether that's money, whether that's power, like we'll take it. You know what I mean? If these people became Muslim today, like we'll take it any day, right? So it's amazing that these people are fighting against the Prophet, almost kills them in this battle of Uhud. We're going to get to it in a bit, but they're the ones that become Muslim, and then fighting with the Muslims and taking over lands of Syria, Persia, and Syria, and so forth, right? So anyhow, so this is the army that's coming up to the Prophet. Now the Prophet's uncle is in Mecca. His name is Abbas. Okay, and so he sends a letter to the Prophet and says, "Hey, the army is coming. They're gathering. They're going to come and get you." Right. So he sends a letter to over there. They go and deliver it. The Prophet is in Masjid Quba. We talked about that before. He gets this letter. He runs to Medina, and he tries because he don't know where the army's at. How far they already came up already. Are they just outside the city? And then he makes an announcement that here that the army's coming. We need to gather our own army, and we have to protect the city because they're coming fast. So on the 6th day of Shawwal, now we're in the 3rd year now. It's a year after the Battle of Badr, right? The Prophet gathers the army. The Quraysh come with their 3,000 men, and they settle by the place of Uhud. Okay, they're there waiting. Okay, and they're going to attack. So the Muslims have to get their army ready to get together. The Prophet gathers everyone and takes shura, right, consultation, and tells everyone, what do you think we should do? Should we go out to Uhud and fight them out in the main desert, the main battlefield, or should we stay in Medina? Okay, we know Medina, we know the roads, we know the houses, we know the palm trees are at. We can hide, we can ambush them, etc. Okay, and everyone's like, no, we want to go out and we want to slaughter them, we want to fight them. Okay, it's to be much more of a bigger attack if we do that. Because if you stay in the Medina, it looks like if you're a little scared. That we're here, our houses, we're hiding. It doesn't look like you're afraid, if you will. Okay, so they say, Rasulullah, we want to go out, we want to fight. And then the Prophet says something very interesting. He said, I had a dream where in my dream, I saw that I was slaughtering, that a cow was slaughtered, and that there was a groove on a dent in my sword, and that I was in an immune armor. Like I was in an armor and no one could penetrate it. Okay. And what this meant, this dream was that, number one, that the cow being slaughtered would mean that somebody from his family is going to die, and that, and then the chip in his sword meant that, the cows mean that some of his men were going to die. The chip in his sword mean that someone from his household is going to die, and the armor was that Medina. If you stay in Medina, it will be a fortification for you. Okay, and tells the dreams to the people. But no, we want to go out. We want to fight. Okay, and so here the Prophet ﷺ is not being a dictator. He's getting the consultation of the people, right, and finding what they want. And he says, if that's the case, then guess what? We'll go out and we'll fight them on the battlefield in Uhud, right, out in the desert, if you will. Okay, Abdullah ibn Ubay, the leader of the hypocrites, says, yes. I think that we should stay in Medina. We shouldn't go out. I agree with the Prophet ﷺ, right? Why do you say that for? Because he's a hypocrite. He's the one to go out there and get himself killed. He could stay in Medina, he could stay in his house, he could hide behind a tree, and then at the end he walks out and says like, oh, I did so much work, right? So he was saying that, look, I'm agreeing with the Prophet ﷺ, we should stay in Medina, okay? And then here all of them started suggesting that, we should go out. And here the Prophet ﷺ goes in and he starts putting on his armor and so forth. Now some people started talking and said, the Prophet ﷺ is telling us to go out, and not staying in Medina, sorry, not to go out. And you guys are all excited and you guys are causing all this kind of like, we want to go out, we want to fight them. And you're not listening to what the Prophet ﷺ wants to do, even though he's asking your opinion. Okay. Sometimes you learn that, it's good to ask people's opinion, but you yourself have the most knowledge of what's kind of going on. But out of respect, you want to include everybody. But one thing you have to understand that if this happens to any one of us, you have to recognize that, that person is asking for my opinion, but knowing you have the most expertise, that, I will go with what you have to say. You have to humble yourself sometimes, that, this might happen between spouses. They might say something, I think the children should do this. They're like, I don't know, you're with the children all day long. I don't know what's that? I'm not here. Maybe that's the way we should discipline them. Maybe that's the school we should do. Maybe that's the teacher we should pick, right? But some people like to say no and throw their opinion in there, even though they don't have no expertise on what the heck they're talking about. If you work in any company, this happens all the time. People who shouldn't be in projects are on projects and they're talking and giving an opinion. What are you on this meeting for, right? But we want to incorporate you and want you to be a part of it. And, we're a team, etc. Right? But something you have to understand, like, my opinion here is probably not the best thing, and maybe it's based on emotion. These people we want to fight, we want to have a slaughter in the land, and most of these people, they didn't fight in Badr. So now they're saying, it's our turn. We want to go and fight because we weren't there last time. So we want to be with the Prophet ﷺ. You guys had victory last time. The angels were there, all these kind of things. So they want to participate in this. Okay. So the Prophet ﷺ goes ahead and he starts putting on his armor. They come to them and say, Ya Rasulullah, we changed our mind. We shouldn't have pressured you. We shouldn't tell you want to go out. And then the Prophet ﷺ says something very interesting, where he said it's not befitting that a prophet, once he puts his armor on and gets ready and notified everyone we're going to go out, to change his mind, unless there has been manifest, whatever the war happens. Now, a lot of them I say well, if you learn something about what you should do, shouldn't you change it? You know what I mean? That's important. But none of us, I'll assume none of us here has probably ever been in a warfare before or anything like this. But if you're about to go out somewhere and you're going to fight, you have people risking their life. You're like, hey guys, actually let's go back. Let's come back. This is I don't feel it right now. And people were like, and what happened? People lose faith in you. Like, I don't know if he knows what he's doing. Like, you know what I mean? Is this the best option? It doesn't look too good. Like, we don't have our game plan. If you're playing sports and we're about to do a play, and the guys, no, let's change the play right now. Everyone's like, we have no confidence in our leader anymore. You know what I mean? I don't know if you're saying that we should shoot the ball and he should shoot the ball. I don't know, right? So we made a plan. Let's go with it. And this is something that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala says in the Quran. I'm trying to get this thing the ayah down, but it's somewhere on one of these slides here, where Allah Subhanahu wa Taala says, and I believe it's in Surah Al Imran or here he goes. Yeah, Surah Al Imran, where Allah Subhanahu wa Taala says, إذا عزمت فتوكل على الله إن الله يحب المتوكلين. That if you make a decision to do something, azamta means determined to do something, then have trust, tawakkul. Okay, that what, I think I'm going to go to this college, I'm going to go to this job. I don't know, it might be good for you, it might not be good for me, right? But I'm just going to have trust in Allah. This is my best position I'm going to go to. And Allah says, indeed, He loves those who rely upon Him. That once you make a decision, then go in there. If you're going there half-hearted and you're like, I don't know, then guess what? You're going to probably fail because your heart's not there, right? If you say, no, we're going to decide to go this, that's it. Let's go ahead and do it. And wherever the results is, the results is, right? So this is one of my favorite ayahs in the Quran here, that, if you have made a decision, let's do it. Let's don't second guess ourselves. And it reminds me of a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ in Sahih Muslim, where it's very profound, where the Prophet said that a strong believer is better and more loving to Allah than a weak believer. Okay, that could be physically, or that could be spiritually. Okay, and there's good in everyone. So the Prophet said that everyone has benefits, but cherish that gives you benefit in the hereafter, and seek help from Allah, and do not lose heart. And if anything, a trouble comes to you, don't say, if I had done that, it would have happened so and so, right? Don't keep on saying, if I would have done this, I would have done that, right? Keep on doubting yourself, but say Allah did what He did, and He ordained to do it, And the word if opens the gate of shaitan. So the Prophet is saying that if something happens, we want to decide to do this and we decide to do that. And guess what? The outcome is that job was bad for me. That boss was like terrible, one of the worst mistakes I made. I should have stayed with my company that I'm with. The Prophet says that Qadr Allah ma sha'a fa'al. You should say this is the Qadr of Allah and Allah does what He wills, right? So you can learn a lesson for it. Nothing wrong about learning lessons of mistakes. But if you do something, then you have trust in Allah. If it's bad for you, then you figure it out. Maybe this is a lesson for me, if you will, and then you go back. And the same thing with the Prophet ﷺ. If I would ask any of you here, does he think that he should have stayed in Medina would be better for him and would be better for the Muslims? 100%. He knows that. But sometimes you have to teach people by letting them, by letting them make their mistakes. Let them make mistakes because, they'll learn that, and that's just sometimes what people have to learn. It's unfortunate. Some people, you could tell them, like, don't text when you're driving, put your seatbelt on, etc. And some people just have to get in a really close accident. They're like, oh shoot, I'm trying to not watch, a whole sitcom while I'm driving anymore. You know what I mean? And or read a book or something. Or maybe and people still do it anyhow. But at least for that one moment they learn, right? Some people have to do that. Some people might have to get in a car accident where now they said, okay, now I understand. Now my insurance is up. Now this and this, and now I understand what I just did, right? Hopefully no one has to get to the example where you get to that state. But some people need that state. They need a little slap upside the head. They're like, okay, yeah, now I understand why I don't do that. I didn't take the warning beforehand. And so sometimes it's good that, the Prophet can't let you win all the battles all the time. It'd be too easy. Sometimes you have to have some falter and people are going to learn from that. And then that's how way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches. Right. So here they go out. The Prophet makes an announcement that, we're gonna go out, we're gonna have this battle here, we're gonna go out to the battle in Uhud mountain. He gets the army ready. They have 1,000 people or so in his army. 300 of them are from Abdullah ibn Ubay, the hypocrite. Right? We talked about him, right? He has around 300 people in his army. He comes and says, all right, I'm going to go. Even though he didn't want to go out, but he can't say I'm not going to go. And so he goes with the Prophet. Prophet goes, heads out. He has the armor on, and they head to Uhud for the battle there. That's how much I had for today's lesson. I guess I went a little bit faster than I usually do. I'll just stop there, and then next week, inshallah ta'ala, we'll start the battle of what actually happens in the battle of Uhud, the lessons I learned from it, and then the aftermath. We're going to see what happens after the battle, what the Muslims have to do when the outcome of it, if you will. So we'll stop here, inshallah ta'ala, and then we'll continue next week. Any questions or comments? Anything I did mention or went over from there? Yeah.
I just have a quick question. When you talk about the first major battle,
Battle of Badr?
how old was it?
Brother Prophet at that time. So he was 40 years old when he was became a prophet. Spent 13 years in Mecca, so around 53. And that battle was 2 years after he migrated to Medina. So we're talking about 55 years old, right? This battle it would be 1 year later on, so it would be about 56, if you will. So yeah, definitely not a spring chicken, as they say, right? But it does say like hadith that he had the strength of 2 men and so forth. But he's not like but he still participates in the battle. He's not just sitting down and just like, hey, you guys do this and do this. He's definitely out there. It's not mentioned that he has ever like really killed anyone in battle. I think there's only one incident where he actually hit somebody with one of his swords, from what I remember. But it doesn't mean that but he was out there definitely with the army, riding horses and all that good stuff. Yeah. So yeah, definitely up in age. So that's good that we get that perspective of his age and so forth. Okay. Anything else for anyone else? So I apologize for the whole, didn't have any slides up today. But at the end, we'll make dua. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Rahman, Anta salam, wa minka salam, tabrakta ya dhul jalali ikram, Allahumma salli wa sallim ala nabiyyina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we ask you sending peace and blessings on the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and his family. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we ask you this class, make us come close, have more love for the Prophet ﷺ from what we are learning, Ya Rahman Ya Rahim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we ask you to put this class in our scale of hasanat and Yawm al-Qiyamah, make it a proof for us and not a proof against us. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun, wa salamun al mursaleen, walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Barakallahu feekum. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of you. We'll see you next week.